Hey friends, it's Shauna from Lovely Rustic Weddings and with love from vinyl.etsy.com. Today we're going to do the first layer of epoxy on some glitter tumblers. At this point in the process, the tumblers have already been prepped, which is sanded, washed, and base coated with a white spray paint. They have been glittered twice through the Mod Podge method. So if you haven't seen that yet, I got a few videos on glittering the tumblers. And once that second layer of glitter is dried, I go ahead and dry brush them. So these have already been dry brushed to remove any of the loose glitters that have been left. I have retaped the ends, and that's personal preference. So before I do the first layer of epoxy, I retape the edge. This tape will stay on until about 30 to 45 minutes after the epoxy is applied and has been spinning. So if any of that didn't make sense or you're brand new and that was a lot of holy smokes, lots of stuff, feel free to ask any questions you may have and I'll do my best to answer them. So let's get started. I mixed my epoxy before I started taping just because it does take a little bit to get the epoxy totally mixed. And I use a metal stirring stick. I used to use popsicle sticks, but the waste was a bit much. So I switched to the metal stirring sticks, and I've noticed it also helps keep some of the bubbles out of the epoxy while I'm mixing. I don't necessarily worry too much about the bubbles in the epoxy because I get a lot of them out when I hit it with heat at the end. So before I get started, I'm going to take a little bit of the epoxy and I'm just going to put a drop on my silicone mat. And I do that so that I can keep track of whether or not it's cured without touching my cup. Now the epoxy on the silicone mat pops right off, so I don't have to worry about ruining my mat. That's why I use a silicone mat. So now that I am done with the popsicle stick, the metal stirring stick, I just wipe that off before it even cures. And that's good to go for my next cup, or my next set of epoxy. So today we're going to use the gloved hand to apply the epoxy onto the cups. And I usually start at the white on an ombre cup with white. I'll start at the lighter color and work my way towards the other color. And I don't worry in the beginning about making it even. I just worry about getting coverage on the cup, and I also make a big mess. As I'm getting coverage on the cup, I'm just moving it around, covering the glitter, and you can feel the difference between the exposed glitter and where the epoxy is. Once I get coverage on the white, I'll go ahead and start moving either down or up depending on where I'm standing to my turner to get coverage on the color area. And if I don't have white on a cup, I just start with the lighter color of glitter and move towards the darker. And as I'm doing cups, because I do about 4 cups at least at a time with the epoxy, and as I'm doing the different cups on the first layer of glitter, I always start with my lightest color cups and work my way over to the darker colors just to keep the commingling of the glitters to a minimum. You know, a white or light colored glitter will blend in better than a red glitter on a white cup, if that makes sense. So you can feel once you get total coverage and all that glitter is got some epoxy on it, then I'll start going around and making sure I didn't miss any spots. And I pay special attention here at the bottom seam and the top because you want to make sure you've got glitter all the way around. And then I'll also start pulling off any of the excess epoxy. And I just do that with my hand, rub my finger along it, and put it back into the cup. Okay, so that one's done. We're going to go ahead and move to this one. This glitter is Diamond Dreams and Classic Coral. This next cup here is Opulent Opal and Gilded Grunge glitter colors, in case you're wondering. And I do it the same way, where I'm going to start at the lighter or white colored glitter. And I just slop it on there. I don't pay attention. I'll drip onto the silicone mat, and that's okay too. A lot of people are a lot neater than me while they're working, and that is perfectly fine. That is awesome for you guys. Like I said, as you're doing this, you can feel with your finger where the epoxy has already been placed and where you still need some. And that's all I'm doing. You have to excuse my turner. It's getting a little old. I'm thinking it's time to make a new one. Okay, now that you've got coverage on it, we're going to start pulling off the extra with your finger. Making sure we didn't miss any spots. With epoxy, I put on 3 layers of epoxy. So I'll do this layer, which is the first layer, let it spin, and the amount of time you let it spin will depend on the epoxy that you use. Some take a little bit longer than others to cure, and that's why I put the little spot that we did when I started onto the mat, so that I don't come in here touching my cups to check to see if it's cured or not. I can just check that little spot we did there. And then we'll do another layer. I'm going to see where you guys are at so I can try to move you to these other cups. We'll do another layer of epoxy before we do any decals. Excuse me, I'm moving you guys. Hopefully not too crazy. Okay, so we're going to do these cups here. This one is Rose Gold Glitz with Opulent Opal. This one over here is Baby Blue, Passive Pink, and Opulent Opal. I'm going to have to move this light, so I'm sorry if it gets a little bit dark. Hopefully not too bad. But it's the same way. I start with the lighter or white colored glitters. And because I've been working on, like I said, I stirred this off camera, so it's been sitting a little longer than I would normally have it sit when I'm not videotaping. So it's getting warm, which means it's starting to cure. So I'm gonna work a little bit faster just to try to get the coverage on the cups before it hardens up on me. The epoxy I use is FX epoxy, and it actually cures, I mean, pretty quick. I'll be able to put another layer of epoxy on this tonight. So some important things to remember if you are like me, which not everybody is when it comes to taping off your edges. You do not keep that tape on there until it hardens. It won't come off. So you want to make sure you're paying attention. Don't forget about your cup, set alarm, whatever you got to do to make sure you remember to come back in about 45 minutes or so to remove the tape. I'll try to remember. I've got a video on removing the tape, but it's been a minute since I've done one, so I'll try to do one today if I remember. Because when I remove the tape, I also clean up the edges. So any epoxy that may have seeped underneath the tape, I'm going to use some acetone and clean that up right then when I remove the tape. And doing that saves me from having to clean the rim later with the, a lot of people use an X-Acto knife to clean up the rims later. I use acetone and clean up the rims as I go. It's just personal preference. There's a lot of ways you guys can do these cups. Just because I'm saying it one way doesn't mean it's the only way, and it doesn't, I mean, a lot of people do a lot of different things. So find out what works for you. Try a few different things. Different cups I might do different ways too. So keep that in mind. I mean, watch lots, if you're learning, watch lots of different people and how they do it. And somewhere between what they do and what you've seen other people do, you'll find what works for you and you'll find your own way. Okay? Sorry if my arm's in the way. Now I've actually quit even looking to see. I figure at this point you've seen me do 3 other cups. You pretty much get the idea. And we don't want this epoxy hardening before I get this cup done, because then I'll be sad. People have asked me before if you need a turner to do cups. It's definitely going to make your life easier, but if you're just learning, look up the hang method is a good one to look at for putting epoxy on the cups. Before there was even a video on it, or before I seen the video, my very first cups I actually did with flipping the cup up and down. And which is tedious. I don't recommend doing a lot of cups that way, but if you're just trying to figure out if it's something you want to do, if you enjoy doing, it's a way to get epoxy on a cup, and it actually turned out quite smooth. You're going to do thin layers, so you may have to do a few more layers than you will with a turner, because the thicker the layer, the more the drips are going to be. So if you're going to try doing it without a turner, thinner layers is key. And you just keep flipping it until it quits dripping. So in the beginning I was flipping it from top to bottom every probably 5 minutes. And then as it cures a little bit more, it was, once every hour, once every couple of hours. It just depended on how much dripping was happening. You want to keep that to a minimum. So I'm going to use the rest of this epoxy just by spreading it out over the cups we've already done. Okay, so that is it with that. Taking off my gloves. Alright, so let's see where you guys are at. Alright, so we have the first layer of epoxy on all of the cups. We're going to leave the tape on the cups for about 35 to 45 minutes. And we're going to let it spin for just a second, because we're going to go through real fast. One of the ways that you can get rid of the bubbles, the little micro bubbles that may be in the epoxy, is by using a torch or a heat gun, just adding heat to the cups, and it helps pop the bubbles. So we're going to do that really fast, excuse the noise, and you just add the heat. Did you see me? I hit the epoxy, but that's okay because it's not hard yet, so it's not going to leave a spot. That's what I get for trying to work in between the camera. Okay. that is it. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to leave these spin for, like I said, about 45 minutes. At that point, we'll remove the tape and use acetone to clean up any areas that may have seeped underneath the tape. And that is it. If you guys have any questions, let me know. You can check out all of the glitter that you've seen is available at withlovefromvinyl.etsy.com. And I have a Facebook page if you want to check me out there too, if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching, guys. You have a great day.